Hey nerds, Todd Simmons coming back at you with a little more Toddomation. So, welcome to the third video in this playlist. So, you should have already went and gotten your Arista cEOS file, and you should have went and gotten the directory structure from my repo. Now, as you can see, I've got the repo up on the screen, local ContainerLab. It's got the Arista folder in it, and if you look in that Arista folder, you'll see that we've got the init configs in this one. What's not here is the images file. So you'll need to add the images file to your local directory, and then that's where you're going to put that cEOS image in there. So make sure that you've gotten these init configs. These are actually all the initial configs that we're going to be using on the device, but I'll get to those a little bit later. And then the ToddoLab, which is a very, very important file, which once again, I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But that is here, everything except for the images. I didn't put the images directory up there. Actually, I did, but I forgot the ignore file that allows you to have the images, an empty directory inside GitHub. So let's just close that out. This is where we're at. We're still connected to Orb, as we can see down here, but let's look at the local folder structure real fast. So inside my local folder structure, let me just drop this to eliminate any confusion. And our Orb stack is obviously still running. So inside of our labs directory, we want to have the Arista. Now, I'm going to do some other ones. So, this makes sense to have a directory just for Arista. And inside the Arista directory, you can see I've got the images, the init configs, and then the ToddoLab, which we're going to go over very specifically. Inside my images directory, you can see I have my cEOS image. This particular one is 430.1 Foxtrot, but it can be any one that you want as long as it's a valid cEOS image. Remember, you want to make sure that you get the 64-bit version as well. And then I've got the init configs, and I've broken these down into at least a data center. Maybe you want to do data center 1, data center 2, and you have different ways to do it. So I just kind of gave you a basic structure to go with. And then the initial configs for these as well, which are very, very basic configs. They're going to be enough for you to get into them with admin and no password. But this is the file structure that you're going to want to use when you're doing that. So we need to have this done at this point in the video, because in order to create the Docker image, you have to have this cEOS image. So if you hadn't gotten that, right, pause the video, run and get it. And in the previous video, I put a link, and I'll put another link in this video on how to actually go get those. Arista's going to give it to you. They're going to give it to you for free. You just have to agree to their terms of service. So let's minimize this. Let's go back into our VS Code here with the window that we had. We should still be at the same point that we left off from the last video. Okay. Everything should be connected. Just to verify, right? We can do the CLab version, and we're still in ContainerLab. And then we can look in our labs folder, right? Do an ls space -al, and we can see I've got the Arista directory. At this point, I'm actually going to change into that Arista directory because that's where I want to be. So we do the cd command. Let me give you a little space here. So cd, which is just change directory. We type the capital A. You hit tab, it'll finish it off for you. Now remember, this is Linux. You can't type lowercase a and have it finish for you, because this is a Linux system that's running on the VM on Orb stack. Okay. So once we get in there, we can do the same ls -al. L is the A, show everything. L, show the list. And we can see we've got an images directory, an init configs directory, and then we have the file, the topo.clab.yaml. And I'm going to go over this topology file in the next video in some detail to make sure that you understand it. Now, this will work for you, but if you're having some issues, you don't have enough memory, you might have to change this up just a little bit. This video should be really quick. We're going to create a Docker image. We're going to create it from the cEOS file that you downloaded. Now, if you're familiar with Docker, we're not actually creating the image. It's already in a format for us, so we can actually do an import instead of actually create the image. What we want to use is just make sure that we've got Docker running, right? So Docker space, I like to do the -- version. Okay, so our Docker is running. So at this point, We're going to import the cEOS version by using the Docker command and then import. Then we have to tell it where it's at. Now, we're in the Arista directory. We are not in the images directory. So we'll have to get to the images directory, and we can just start to type imag. If you didn't use the images directory, it's whatever directory that you have inside your Arista folder here. I'd recommend just using the Arista directory here. And then we're going to type lowercase c. The only item that I have in this directory is that image. If you have multiple images, then you're going to have to specify it. Now, when you import an image using Docker, you have to import the image and then you have to name it. I can't tell you how important this is, okay? That's why I wanted you to already have the topology file and everything updated. So if you'll come over here into your VS Code, into your Explorer extension, and if you'll click on this topolab.yaml, and I'm going to go over this entire file in the next video, but you need to understand one thing that's very, very important. In this topology section that I've identified here, you'll see that there's kinds, and then we specified Arista cEOS. That's going to be a variable that we're going to use. And that variable is going to be associated with this image right here, with this name. Now, if you didn't download 430.1 Foxtrot, maybe you're looking at something very, very new and you're labbing it up. Maybe you got, the 434 or whatever version that you got, that it doesn't matter, but you do want them to match. So notice down here, I have the 431 Fox version, and inside my lab, I'm saying cEOS : 431 Foxtrot here. You want these to match, and whatever you name the Docker image when you do the import, it has to match whatever is inside this topology, kinds, Arista cEOS perfectly. So I'm actually going to just copy that out. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here. I've got my Docker import images. It'll work if you hit enter right now. Well, it'll import it, but it won't work because that name right there must be the name of the Docker image that gets created. So I'm going to do a Control V, and then I'm going to hit enter. Now, at this point, it's actually running. Okay, we can see that there's nothing going on. It's just got the return. So this is Docker at this particular point on that Linux VM, importing the cEOS image. And after it imports it, it's going to name it exactly all lowercase cEOS. And then the colon 4.301 Foxtrot, that's capital F. And as you can see, we got our SHA-256, which is just basically our checksum of the file that was created. So that created the cEOS image that's going to be used by ContainerLab. Now, every time we spin up a switch, it's going to use another one of those images. That's why it gets so large so fast. So we want to make sure that it works. So the first thing that we type after that is we want to look at the images that are currently been installed or imported onto our Linux system, and we can just use the Docker images, make sure that that's plural, and it'll create a list. Now notice it's got the repository and the tag, okay? And then this image ID, which is important if you want to add, edit, delete things. Obviously we just created. Now here we go, 2.44 gigabyte. This is why your memory is so important. As it starts to load, it's going to bring all of that into memory. And if you don't have enough memory, it's not going to work. Now, I'm going to teach you a way to get around that inside the topology file by using something called a startup delay that I'll show you. You probably see it on the screen now, but I'm going to show you more about that in the next lab. So once you have this, you've created your Docker image, you're good to go. Now you have to have that Docker image in there. Okay, if you accidentally did something like this and you created the Docker image and you named it wrong, or you did something like that without actually putting a name on it, I want to show you just real fast how to clean that up. So once again, it's going to take, 20, 30 seconds for it to actually create the Docker image. Once the Docker image is created, it'll give us the hash that comes up with just kind of its validation for the file. once that comes up, we're going to type the Docker images again, just like we see that it came up here. So I'm going to type Docker images and see that there is a none, right, that was just created 6 seconds ago. Okay, this will not work. Okay, because the repository and the tag together don't match, ContainerLab is not going to be able to create a image from this Docker image that we have. Okay, it's of no use to you. There's no reason to have it here. So what we want to do is see this image ID. Okay, I'm going to select that and then I'm going to copy it to my screen. Okay, and then I'm going to use the Docker RMI command. Okay, and delete it. Okay, there's no reason to have it there. If you accidentally type that wrong, let's just make sure that the images are fine. And now I look back at my repository. The repository is cEOS, which was the very first part of the colon that I put in, and then the tag 430. ContainerLab is going to need that. That must match perfectly. So this was a quick one. Okay, we created the Docker image from the cEOS file that we downloaded from arista.com. At this point, we're done with the video. Now, if your screen does not look like mine, you are not done though. Make sure that you have that image. It's named properly. And then in the next video, we're going to go over this topology file that you see right here. Very detailed to make sure that you understand so you can set your own lab up. Okay. Hopefully you're enjoying the series. Like, subscribe, and next video coming up. Talk to y'all later, nerds. Bye.